Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station. You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome back, all our listeners who are tuned in to the Middle Path Radio. Just a quick apology, due to some technical difficulties, we were slightly 3 minutes behind schedule, so hopefully that hasn't put any of you off. This is your brother Ahmed on the Security Council, joined by my co-hosts, the permanent members of the Security Council, brother Zain and brother Khabbab.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Yeah, this is Zain speaking. Got a packed program this week. There's a lot of things that happened over the whole week, so looking forward to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Khabbab speaking. So yes, we have a very packed show, but we would really like our listeners to call in, to text in, or to WhatsApp us on 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. You can also email us at info@middlepathradio.com.
Email us on info@middlepathradio.com.
What did I say?
Although somebody's going to put the at before info. Email us at info.
At
info.
Middle Path. Info at, yeah.
Yeah, you got to be watch out for those Bevins out there. There's quite a few of them. So I mean, yeah, obviously we've got Twitter and Facebook. You know, follow us on Twitter. It's at Middle Path Radio. All one word. That's at Middle Path Radio for regular updates on all the forthcoming shows, including this one, Security Council, but also for the shows, the Bangla show, the current affairs show that is done in the Bengali language. We also get updates and reminders about the Madarij al-Salikin Islamic show every weekend. However, this is the Security Council, Brother Zain, and what does our lineup look like? I know you said it's packed.
It is packed. I mean, we had Mr. Cameron coming out over the last couple of days and saying some statements regarding... well, I'm going to say it's regarding Muslims because it is regarding Muslims. The whole thing is regarding Muslims.
I'm going to read some of that out so you will see whether what you're saying is true or not.
Yeah. So we got a lineup. We got what's his name? Brother Kaleem. Sorry.
Yes, brother Kaleem
from Cage coming on and talking about some of the things that have been spoken by Mr. Cameron about. Well, I would call it civil rights. Or human rights, actually.
That's right. He'll be talking about the powers that the UK government already has under the terrorism legislation.
Absolutely, and more, and the proposed plans coming in terms of what else they're going to add to that to make life more difficult, if you want to call it, for the ordinary Muslims.
That's right. There's some saber-rattling coming out the government as to doing more and more wide-reaching, far-reaching kind of powers to kind of deal with this, quote, unquote, threat of extremism. They're even not using the word terrorism so much anymore because they know terrorism has a certain legal definition. Extremism is a much more wider term with its wider kind of varied definition.
They can actually put in what they want to think about extremism,
that's
how
right.
they perceive extremism and so forth. So that's the first
just before we move on to the other ones, Brother Kaleem, why we're bringing him on air today, he's been subject to some control orders himself. Absolutely, as well, so he can speak directly from his experience as to how these things can affect a Muslim's life.
Yep.
Carry on, Brother Zain.
So yeah, that's one, and related to that, we'll talk a bit about the recent statements from some of the MPs and Lords coming out and saying that Britain needs to join forces with Assad and the real terrorists, if you want to call it, to fight this so-called terrorism. No, ISIS is just part of it.
Yeah, so it's not just ISIS. Yeah,
it's not just ISIS. If it was just ISIS, then we would have said, okay,
it's
just
basically
ISIS.
Everybody else except FSA, basically.
Well, even the FSA, there's elements that they don't like. So we'll have to be. Anyway, we'll go into that soon, and then we've got we'll speak about the attack on George Galloway by what it seems like an extremist. Jewish person, but we don't know yet. We'll talk about it more to find out exactly what's behind that.
Yep, we've got the video here, but we won't play that. Sure. I have watched the whole video. It's quite a lengthy video.
Yeah, sure. And go on to maybe also talk about Israel, how Israel is stealing land over the last 30 years and so forth.
It's basically recently done a huge land grab. They've encroached on more land.
On the West Bank, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Land that they haven't, the kind of amount of land that they've just occupied in the last couple of days has not been done by Israel in the last 30 years. They've been doing that over the years, of course, but this is like the biggest amount since the last 30 years, really.
Yeah, it's just when everyone's got their eyes off the ball, quickly get this.
Yes. Very convenient, of course.
I forgot actually one very important topic we're going to talk about in relation to Syria is Usama Hasan and the so-called Fatwa. So that's going to be quite comical. So I'm waiting for Nouri, who are expert in Quilliam, to talk about that one.
That's okay. What else have we got on the list? Because we've got a few other items on the list. I think there was something about some tech stuff and something else that's been in the news quite heavily as well.
Yeah, normally I wouldn't speak about technology on this show, as you know.
Yeah, you've already had a go at me, but I've explained to you that this one's in the lineup because of the fact that everybody, even the mainstream non-tech outlets, are covering it.
Unfortunately, Ahmed's gone into that...
He's trying to take over again.
Take over? Listen, just carry on with the program.
No, so we'll talk about, maybe if we have got time, a bit about the iCloud hacking and so forth, especially with the celebrities and all that. And
there's a blog piece in the Telegraph about some sort of Islamophobic racism, something about integration on there. Have you got that in your list?
I do have it on the list. To be honest, I didn't read up on that one.
But
so
I think I don't think we have to worry at all, because I'm sure Brother Ahmed has come prepared again with his lists of.
Let me read to you the number
or
of articles.
Or his archive.
4, 5, 6, 7,
hang
8,
on.
9, 10, 11, 12,
How many articles
13,
today,
14,
Brother
15,
Ahmed?
16, 17, 18 articles.
18 articles.
Last week I had to cut it short and leave early. This week, me and Khabbab will make sure that you're limited in how many articles you read. Yeah.
Otherwise, it will become the article show.
No, this is the. He's going to be the radio WikiLeaks. That's
it.
He's our source of information.
I am the ambassador for
the reference point,
Mr. Assange and Snowden.
Yeah, you wish. So, and the last thing that we may, if we've got time, we'll speak about this lady called Katy Hopkins and some of the things that she's been tweeting about.
Why did you call her lady? Lady is a term of some sort of respect and honor. Like a sir, equivalent of sir,
well,
is lady.
I don't think if I were to really express what I think of her, I don't think I'm allowed to say on radio.
That's right.
So
a vile example of a woman, probably something.
We'll just call her the thing.
The witch.
The thing is fine.
So Katy Hopkins and her racist outburst. So those are the lineup for the show.
Just want to make it clear that this is not a news program. This is a opinion, current affairs discussion show.
Bruv, what I say is news. So yeah,
exactly. So, by the way, the views of the presenters don't necessarily always represent the views of Middle Path Radio. That was a quick disclaimer.
I love that disclaimer. So what I say sometimes doesn't represent what I say.
What I say doesn't represent me.
Exactly.
Yes. So anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah, definitely. I know there's something really a new development that happened today. Okay, this wasn't actually in our lineup, but I guess we have to talk about it because it's big news. Brother Khabbab.
It is the so-called report coming out of the beheading of another US journalist by ISIS.
I see.
So this is again very much linked in with a wider discussion regarding Syria, because a lot of the discussion points here, although they are individually or separately news on their own, they're all related to one core topic, which is really all based around Syria.
Just on that, the Prime Minister, just on the way here, I've been listening to some of the statements he's been saying on the radio.
The Prime Minister's on the way here?
No, he's not. The Prime Minister, no, that's the different Prime Minister. Now the Prime Minister, the David Cameron.
Kofi Annan?
Kofi. I don't think the listeners understand who they are, but yeah. So no, the Prime Minister already actually he came up with a statement on the beheading, and he said that it's vile and so forth and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't hear any statements coming up when the Palestinians were getting murdered and slaughtered, except for the fact that they got the right to defend, and Israel has to restrain itself.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's true. I mean, people in Palestine have been beheaded by way of explosives and by way of rocket missiles from Apache helicopters and other high-flying jets. So this is something that's really very strange that this is happening. I mean, let's get stuck into this one before we have Brother Kaleem on air very shortly. Okay, very shortly, because he's expecting to go on air in about 5 to 7 minutes time. So what do you guys make of this, Brother Khabab? I know you just mentioned that a gentleman by the name of Steven Sotloff has been reported. It's been reported that he's been killed.
Apparently, there is a video out.
Yeah, video's been put out. The security services are obviously saying that they can't actually verify if it's entirely genuine. But let's go on the basis that it may be genuine. What's going on? I mean, we talked about James Foley, last week, I believe.
Again, it is interesting what's happening, because you can see it's the clear double standards in the reporting of this individual, and what makes this individual so important, what makes this group so important in comparison to other organizations or other groups and other atrocities taking place. And as Brother kind of Zain mentioned before, you've seen it that Israel in itself is effectively a terrorist entity, a terrorist country who's carrying out acts of terrorism daily for the last over 60 years.
Yep.
Yet, that isn't really reported in the same light, nor given that same weight.
Apparently all you have to say is that you're doing it in self-defense and it's okay.
Well, I think, was that not what?
Self-defense, yeah.
Is that, well, that's the same thing that...
The question is, brother, do you condemn the rockets coming out from Hamas? That's what I really want to know. Do you condemn the rockets coming out from Hamas?
The condemnation has nothing to do with this story.
Well, I'm going to go as far as to say that if Israel is allowed to defend itself using rockets to kill civilians in its name... in its right to defend itself, then the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves with the means that they best can use. So
the thing is, if we apply the whole point, which is that everybody has a right to defend themselves, then we should it should be clear. There shouldn't be no double standards in that.
Every human being has the right to defend themselves. Palestinian has a right to defend themselves.
So therefore, it shouldn't be the case that only one side has a right to defend themselves. What about the other
and
side?
use rockets to kill Palestinians.
Hang on. Let's go back to the subject. Is ISIS defending itself?
Okay, that's a good question. That's what we were originally talking about. Well, let's talk about it. That's a good question. Maybe the wider context will help here, because ISIS didn't exactly exist. And I want to come back to Prime Minister's comments on this, by the way, because he said some very misleading things in his statement. I'm going to read that after.
Is this the statement that he made recently?
Yeah, this is the one about the passport powers and stuff. Not today's one.
Oh, you're talking about the legislation?
Yeah, the legislation about the passport. But he mentioned some very powerful stuff. I'm going to read to you. I've highlighted some of his words.
The scaremongering,
Yeah. So, I mean, about the wider context, I mean, I've just said here that ISIS didn't exist before Assad was allowed to do what he's doing in Syria. Okay, but ISIS existed before Assad in that they were created as a reaction to the US invasion
to the US terrorism.
Iraq. So they came and invaded Iraq and waged that war that we all know now was based on a pack of lies. What most people will technically say that's illegal. It's not something that should be taken lightly. A lot of people lost their lives, entire country destroyed and ruined. Okay, and even today I was listening to let's just say I was listening to LBC Radio, and they were saying, LBC Radio, love them. So they were just saying that, I mean, they had a British soldier on there, by the way, and they asked the British soldier, don't you think Iraq was safer and a better place before Saddam Hussein was removed? Isn't it worse now since the US invasion? And I think the answer is he tried to kind of brush it off. He was waffling a little bit. He was saying, what we knew then isn't the same as what we know now. Hindsight is 2020. He wasn't really given it was a very clear, straightforward question. Is Iraq worse now than before? And I think everybody knows, not only is Iraq worse now than before the US invasion, the war they waged in Iraq based on a pack of lies, but the entire international community is probably less safe as a result of these types of decisions to go to war in places, kill people, destroy countries, drop bombs, on people, appropriate their resources like their oil fields and stuff like that. I think all of that has made the world a lot more of an unsafe situation. And you asked me about ISIS, are they just defending themselves? I think I don't want to comment particularly about ISIS, I want to say that the revolution or the resistance or the what they would call the insurgency started in Iraq because the Americans moved there. There were no Sunni rebel groups. ISIS didn't exist. ISIS was born after the US invasion. Okay, and again they became very influential in Syria because Assad was doing what it wanted to do. And it was beheading children. Assad regime was killing innocent civilians. Women were being used, as victims of war. Rape was being used as a weapon of war. This kind of stuff is documented. It's all over videos. There are videos of people who have been.
Point being is that are their lives less important than that life of that journalist or the journalist before that?
That's I think Habab. What do you think, man?
No, so the point is that the double standard comes in again in terms of one life being more important because it's from the West, maybe because it's a non-Muslim.
It's not really even the West. If you look at it, there are many other examples of Westerners who have maybe stood up for other human rights.
No, sorry.
Violations.
When I say
it's selective, it's very much selective.
Sorry, when I said Westerners, I mean we're from the West ourselves, but I'm talking about the West being how I meant it was non-Muslims really, because
even non-Muslims, we've seen it with those non-Muslims that are, for example, pro-Palestine, and you've seen many of those who have given their lives in Palestine, even who were killed and so forth. Again, it's more of a pick and choose those who are of interest to the agenda of the time, really. That's right. Because if you look at it, they pick up the very interesting about the whole what happened in Nigeria with Boko Haram and bring back our girls, that whole hashtag thing. Again, because it suited their interest. And that's what it is. End of the day, I think many, people are expendable to Western governments. I don't think they're of any value unless they hold a political kind of clout which they can use.
Yeah. I think what's his name today? He used to be an advisor to the prevent strategy of the government, and he said, Jahan Mahmood is his name, I think, and he said that you can't really legislate your way out of a mess you helped to create. Okay, and that's really the situation. The US and the UK, they created this situation. I mean, they created what is ISIS, or the ISIS response to what was happening out there. Now you can't suggest that somehow let's amputate that part of recent history, that part of the context, and let's just talk about them, how these guys are monsters and savages killing people on TV and putting it out there on social media. You've got to look at the whole picture, and that's really very important, to look at the entire wider picture and the causes. There's everything. I mean, you learn this as kids, and the way politicians are going about it. There's a cause and effect with everything, and right now what the world is seeing and what's being really promoted heavily in the media is the effect of certain causes in the Middle East, and those causes are lie squarely at the feet of Western foreign policy.
But if you look at the media, whether the media or the politicians, so-called mainstream media, that is, they have an agenda. So they will say, oh, let's not look at history, let's look at what's happening now. But hang on, it's history that what's made the present.
That's right.
What it is. So it is important.
It's funny you say that, because I know. We've got Brother Kaleem on the line, but while you're commenting on that about the history point, I just want to say it's so strange that history doesn't seem to matter when it comes to Palestine. Even recent history doesn't seem to matter when it comes to the 2003 invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan. They say, look, we can talk about the past, let's talk about the future. We need to look at how we can move forward and, patronize you when it comes to your... But you want to talk about September the 11th? You're never allowed to forget that. You want to talk about the Holocaust? You're never allowed to forget that. That's before the invasion of Palestine by the Israelis and the Haganah, by the military Jewish force that they had. So when you talk about Muslims' grievances that date back only a few years or into recent history, we get this kind of very blasé, let's gloss it over, guys. Come on, let's focus on the future. You Muslims shouldn't be dwelling on the past so much. But when it comes to 2001 or 2003, September the 11th, excuse me, people are not willing to let you ever forget that, and Muslims will have to always forget forever, apologize for something that they weren't responsible for. Brother Zain.
Now, so just before we go on to our guest, I'd just like to read out the number for the studio again. So call us or message us or WhatsApp us on 07 477 080248. That's 07477 080248.
Okay, we have Brother Kaleem Bullivant on the show with us, and we just quickly remind you again, as Brother Zain did, that Brother Kaleem is actually a member of staff at CAGE, formerly known as CAGE Prisoners, a civil liberties advocacy group dealing with victims of the war of terror. Brother Kaleem has also himself been subject to control orders in the recent last few years, so he will talk to us about the recent statements and announcements by Prime Minister David Cameron, and the powers that Mr. Cameron is proposing in dealing with this so-called threat of extremism. Brother Kaleem, you are live on air. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Good to have you on the show. Alhamdulillah, we are fine. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Jazakallah khairan for having me on.
Barakallah
It's very nice to talk to you guys.
It's a pleasure that you've given us some of your time. Let's quickly get stuck in. So, what do you make of the whole situation with the recent announcements and the existing powers, and also your experience with the control orders themselves?
To be honest, these recent announcements are enough to make you despair. The first thing is that they're packaging up old measures as new again. And it's a typical politics game. What do you do when you don't have any answers to a problem? You just take something that you've been doing for a while, repackage it as new, make a hoo-ha about it, have a big press conference, and make it look like you've got something to say. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. They're talking about taking the passports away from people. Well, they've been doing that since April 2014. Theresa May said she was going to start using the royal prerogative to take away people's passports. They say that they need to take away your passport at the border in case someone's trying to leave. Well, they can do that with Schedule 7. With Schedule 7, they can stop you for up to 9 hours, and then they can take your passport away for up to a week. So in that week, they could then do the royal prerogative. All of these things are a nonsense because they've already got all of the powers that they claim that they need. So why are you doing a big press conference to implement powers that you already have?
That's right. That's right.
That's the question that we have to ask ourselves.
And those existing powers would probably be something that Muslims would contest anyway.
Well, the problem is that all of these powers will only be used against the Muslims. So they're inherently racist and Islamophobic. Do you think they're going to use these powers on IDF soldiers that have just been shooting little Palestinian children and committing war crimes?
These are British guys who go over to Israel and join the Israeli armed forces.
I mean, look, if we take the most the biggest number of people that are alleged to have gone to Syria and Iraq, the number is 500. Yeah. Yep. Now, to be honest, I think that's a vastly overblown number, but we'll work with that number now.
Agreed.
Yeah? 500 out of a population of Muslims in this country of around 5 million. Yeah. If you take the number of British Jews fighting in the IDF, it's at the moment, right now, it's 100 out of a population of 500,000.
So Jewish population is only 500,000?
Yes.
Wow.
So there's a much higher percentage
of Jews, British
radical Jews going off to fight and commit war crimes than Muslims. Yeah, you never hear about it. It's never in the headlines. And the British Israelis that go off and fight with the IDF will not have to worry about having their citizenship stripped. They will not have to worry about TPIMs and control orders when they come back. They'll come back to a hero's welcome in their own community and get on with their lives and do whatever it is that they want to do for the rest of their lives.
Why do you think, speak your mind, why do you think this is? You've already mentioned it. Why this disparity? What would you put that down to?
I'll be honest, for a number of years, there has been a growing Islamophobia. And fundamentally, what people need to realize is that capitalism and the system that we live in can't exist without an enemy. Yeah. So if you look back to the early 20th century, you had fascism and obviously the rise of Germany. Then you had the Cold War. After the Cold War ended, it was the Irish Troubles, and the Irish were the suspect community. You have McCarthyism and the hunt for communists. There's always an enemy. There's always someone to keep you afraid, and there's always a boogeyman. And the boogeyman of our time right now and for the foreseeable future is the Muslims. So the policies are going to be inherently Islamophobic and attacking us purely on the basis of our deen. And one of the things that they're most terrified about is that the return of a Khilafah and the return of, and the rise of Islam as a political power that could then threaten the homogeny of the current order of things.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, when you say a return of a Khilafah, are you referring to the ISIS, or are you referring to that as a general Islamic concept?
I'm referring to it in its general Islamic concept,
right?
Not in particular ISIS. I think it's sadly very clear that some of the things that are going on out there in that place isn't necessarily what a Khilafah should be looking like.
Right.
But may Allah give those brothers tawfiq to change to change and learn and grow, yes. And may Allah give us tawfiq to grow and learn and perfect our deen as well.
Quick thing about the your personal experience. Sorry to interrupt you, because we've got a lot to go through. Your personal experience under the control orders. What were they called, and how did that affect your life? Just as a Muslim and as a British citizen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was a fairly new Muslim convert. I've been Muslim for maybe 3-4 years. I was looking to go out to Syria. This is 2006, long before the current crisis out there, to work with orphans in Damascus, learn some Arabic, just see the Muslim world. I was new to the deen. I wanted to get out there and get involved and do some good. So
sorry to interrupt. So you're not necessarily a Bangladeshi or an Arab or Moroccan or Somalian by ethnic background?
No, I'm Irish and Scottish, which is kind of different.
Still Caucasian in the general sense. Yeah, you're white, basically.
Caucasian, yes,
okay.
Caucasian.
But you reverted to Islam.
I converted to Islam when I was about 22. Generally, my family already had a rule in it that you could only marry and breed with people that had fought the British, so that's why it was mainly Scottish and Irish. There's a bit of French in there as well, but we tend to write that off because they were quite colonial.
Wouldn't be very British to tell everybody that. So you had interest in traveling abroad when you became a Muslim and seeing different parts of the Muslim world.
Yeah. So I'd converted, and so that's where my interest lay at that time. And I was stopped from travelling at Heathrow and held under Schedule 7 for 9 hours. I was interrogated by the police and by MI5. They took my fingerprints. It was a massively long ordeal. You feel drained and weak after it because it just goes on and on and on. Sure. I've never had dealings with the police. I've never been in trouble with the police. I've never had a sort of criminal background or anything. So it was kind of like a new experience for me. It's not something that you expect to deal with, especially for such an extended period of time. And so after that, they let me go and they said, "Look, it's all fine. There's no problem." And I actually said to the police and to MI5, I said, "Look, I don't want to cause any problems, and I don't want there to be any misunderstanding here. If there are some places you don't want me to go because you think I might get involved in something that I shouldn't, tell me where they are, and I won't go to them. I'll avoid those places. Yeah, I don't want trouble."
You were very open, and everything was overboard for you, on the table.
Exactly. And they said to me, "Look, you're going to Syria." At this time, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi was kicking off, and his insurgency was in full swing in Iraq. And they were like, "Look, you're going to Syria. Syria is a gateway to Iraq, and that's very dangerous. So, look, just don't go anywhere that can be misconstrued. Don't go to places like Syria or Pakistan where they're common gateways to jihad." So I was like, fine, that's brilliant. You've told me what not to do. I'm gonna listen to that.
That's right.
So I basically then started making plans. A very good friend of mine was Bengali. His family back home in Bangladesh were very wealthy, very, very successful industrialists, and politicians. And in the village that they were originally from, they had a family orphanage. They offered me a job out there, and they offered to let me stay in their family home in the village because it was empty.
Right.
Their family all lived in the big city in Dhaka now. So they said, look, come stay with us in Gulstan for a while, and then you can go out to stay in the orphanage and work. I was like, Alhamdulillah. And Bangladesh is, mashallah, miles away from anywhere. You can't get yourself into too much trouble in Bangladesh. So I thought. A week before I was due to travel, the police, so the MI5 phoned up Auntie G and terrified her by telling her that I was a terrorist, telling her not to let me travel, and telling her that they needed to cancel all of my plans. How they even knew about it was beyond me, yeah? So 2 days after that, I was out on the street with a friend of mine, and the police came up to me, like something out of a movie. You carry Boulevard? And I said, yes. They handed me a brown paper envelope. We said, we're serving you with a control order.
Wow.
I want to stress this. I wasn't arrested. And I still, at this point, had never, ever been arrested. I was put under a control order. My life was literally taken apart and dismantled. And I had never been arrested. I had never even been accused of committing a crime. I was not given any evidence of the crime. And this is the fundamental problem with this system. You've got a system here where a citizen, or even a non-citizen, can be held and abused without any evidence, without any knowledge of what their crime is alleged to have been. And we've still got this on the statute books. They renamed it and they rebranded it in TPIMs, but trust me, the legislation is almost exactly the same word for word. There are whole passages that are exactly lifted out of the control order legislation. Liberty did a really good analysis of this and said that something like around 80% of the legislation is word for word the same.
So nothing's really changed. It's just been rebranded, repackaged.
And this is the stupidity of the announcements the other day. Was one of the things that they did change was that they changed the way that they do relocation.
What do you mean by relocation?
Forced relocation is a form of internal exile. So, let's say...
So they force you to move from where you live, basically?
Yeah. So say for example, your name's Wahid and you live in Lewisham, yeah? What they can do is they can take you away from your area and say, look, you've got to go live in Scotland, in Edinburgh.
Wow.
You don't know anyone there. You've never been there in your life. You don't know where the mosque is. You don't know anyone from the community, and you're stuck in a bedsit normally, a tiny little flat where you can't go out, you can't do anything, you can't meet anyone, you can't talk to anyone, and so basically you're imprisoned in a city that you don't even know. And Lord MacDonald, astaghfirullah, but it's not a lord, but
yes.
They call him a lord. Lord MacDonald said that, and I kind of quote as best as I can from memory, forced relocation is a form of internal exile that is utterly inimical to British values and norms. I want to hold on to that point, British values. Yeah, he said that it is thoroughly disproportionate and repulsive, and there is no reason for its continuation.
Wow.
So at this time, when British Muslims are being told again and again and again that we need to hold on to British values, the government itself is bringing in something that its own Lord says is inimical, is completely opposed, is the polar opposite of British values.
Wow. So
I think
there's some very
hypocrisy-
categorical criticism
the-
coming
the-
of their own policies from inside their own establishment there.
Exactly. Their whole approach is so hypocritical, and they've got to realise that the biggest source of radicalisation, the biggest source of the problems that as they see it, is the source of it all is their own hypocrisy.
Yep. They fail to see this, of course.
No, they see it.
They see
They
it.
fail to they fail to recognise it.
Or
All of
acknowledge it,
their
yeah.
all of their strategies, all of their policies, prevent, challenge, all of these things completely ignore foreign policy and the political causes for radicalisation. I do that in air quotes. Yeah.
Yep.
They fail to recognise all of these things, and instead they say, "Oh, it's a bad version of Islam."
Fantastic. I mean,
Like they're the ones that can tell us what about our deen. Sheikh David Cameron. Sorry, Akhi.
they've become
monopolised.
they're the ones who decide what our religion is and what a good Muslim is and what
What's
a bad
acceptable.
Muslim is. Yeah.
But that was in fact the title of Cage's first report on Prevent: Good Muslim, Bad Muslim.
According
Because
to Mr. Cameron.
According to the government, if you're MCB and you're saying that it's fine to join the armed forces, and you're doing a Living Islam event where you,
I think that was ISB as a correction. Sorry, ISB.
Okay, ISB.
Yeah.
And you're doing a Living Islam event
Yes.
where you skip the Asr Azan and skip the Asr Jamaat because it's Nasheed time on the main stage, then that's a good British Islam. Yeah?
Yeah.
If you're going off to MRDF family retreats, this is a very bad form of Islam, and the Prevent officers need to have a word with Nottingham University and try and get the event shut down.
That's right.
So,
This is exactly what's happening. It's very worrying that kind of message is going out from so-called Islamic events that you can join the armed forces and even participate in these types of campaigns. There's a euphemism for bloodshed and violence abroad, basically. Brother Kaleem, just before we wrap up with yourself, could you just tell us, just briefly, what kind of work you do at Cage?
Cage is a civil liberties and advocacy organisation. So basically, we work on a few broad areas, mainly empowering Muslims, advising Muslims about what to do on war on terror cases. So there are a few strands to our work. We do investigations and work on cases where the normal norms of justice, because to be honest, normative justice is something from fitrah. It's something that is written about in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you're truthful, bring your evidence. That's basically innocent until proven guilty. Yeah? If you are claiming someone's done something, you have to bring your evidence. When the government, either here in Britain or in America, starts stepping away from these norms, then that's where Cage comes in and highlights it and raises awareness on these issues, on the fact that of the hypocrisy of our governments. The second aspect is there's been greatly increased pressure and assaults on Muslims and Muslim organisations. So, be it groups like student rights and right-wing organisations pressuring Muslim ISOCs to not have certain speakers, or be it MI5 and Special Branch coming round and hassling individual Muslims, then they can come to us. We'll give them advice on these issues because we've dealt with them many, many times. We'll hook them up with the right solicitors and the right advocates that can help them in these situations and give them confidence to know what their rights are and know how they can stand up for themselves and defend themselves.
How would people contact you guys? I know that you're doing excellent work and there are a lot of people probably suffering in silence. How would people contact Cage if they needed this help?
The best way is to go on the website. On the website, cage.org.uk. Yeah.
And you can just
on the
Google it. There's plenty of. You've got Facebook page and everything as well.
Yeah, we've got Twitter, Cage UK, at Cage UK. We've got a Facebook page, which is still the old Cage Prisoners.
Okay.
And all of these things will direct you to the website where you can get our email addresses and our phone numbers, and even you can follow individual members of Cage like myself or Asim Qureshi, who are on Facebook and Twitter, and get in touch with us personally. Look, we're not some sort of exclusive and highbrow club here. Cage is largely it's a Muslim organisation. Most of the people that work there, we do have some non-Muslims that work here as well, because they care about justice and they can see the oppression that was being handed out.
Sure.
But look, this is brothers looking to support our brothers and sisters. So if someone approaches me on Facebook and says, "Look, I see MI5 are coming and harassing me," I'm not going to say, "Look, you have to go through the official regime." I'm going to have a word with them, chat with them, try and help them out myself,
Sure.
and direct them in the right way.
Jazakallah khair.
We're your brothers and sisters in Islam.
Shukran. That's a brilliant work that you guys are doing. Really, really must be invaluable in the community, especially at this difficult time. We just wanted to say a very big thank you, Jazakallah khair, for joining us tonight on the Security Council show.
Inshallah, I want to say Jazakallah khair to you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to the Ummah and to be involved in your project.
Barakallahu feek, Brother Kalim Bulevan from Cage. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So that was Brother Kalim from the Civil Liberties Group, Cage, who's just, you've heard here, talking about a variety of different things from the proposed legislation and powers of the UK government, including the ones that are existing powers, and how he himself is, who suffered, as a result of these abuse of these types of powers. And we're going to go on for a very short break. Before we do, Brother Zain has got some info for you.
Just before I do that, it's interesting how he mentions the fact that it's the same thing. It's just regurgitated kind of legislations that they're rebranding, if you want to call it. And the question he's asked, and it is important to ask this question: why now? Why is it that they're doing this right now? Is it some kind of scaremongering to do something else, or what is it that pulled this kind of legislation to happen?
I'll tell you my theory on why now. Is that and Khabab, you can share your comments as well. I mean, you've gone really quiet there. Going to have to consider your permanent, membership.
So you don't
veto. I got veto powers.
You can't discuss that.
I have veto powers.
Okay.
We'll overdo you on that.
Why now? Why are they doing this now? Why are they rebranding and telling us that they're going to use powers to seize people's passports and stuff like that? And why is Theresa May saying that it would be, against people's human rights to seize people's passport when she has already seized people's passports?
Yeah.
So the reason why I think, it's my theory, right? Okay. The reason why I think they're doing this now with the rehash and the rebranding and stuff going on is because of the fact that they think, they know that a lot of people actually are not aware of these kinds of draconian legislation. They know that a lot of people have been completely oblivious of the fact that these types of very, let's say, un-British, undemocratic, so-called rule of law oriented, legislation actually already exists in the UK. But a lot of people were completely oblivious of this because it was only the Muslim community who were suffering from this. Why they're doing this now is right now the appetite of the public opinion that they've created through their so-called announcements and statements, and that the media arm of the government, the propaganda that's coming out from our UK government is, look at these horrible things that are going on. You guys are demanding, you public people are telling us now the government needs to be tough on extremism. The government needs to do more about, these kinds of threats to the UK. What are they doing? Just sitting on their, bottoms, twiddling their thumbs. So now the Prime Minister's come out saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. These are new powers that we need, when actually they've already got these powers. They've been abusing those powers for a long time. Right. And now is just the right time to sell it to the public.
It's basically bring it out into the mainstream.
So
because
now it's acceptable. Now people will say, yeah, that's exactly what we need to do to these Muslims out there.
Sure. Just before we move on, I'd like to actually give it the number again. It's 07 477 080248. That's 07 477 080248. Do text us, WhatsApp us, and call us if you wish to be on air and share your thoughts.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program. Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.
مسكين قلبك لا يقوى لا يتحمل أن يبقى في ضيق خصام لا لن يقدر فطرتك تنادي بصفاء مهما يحصل سامح واصفح أنت الرابح وغدا تؤجر سامح أنت الرابح سامح واصفح واغفر واعفو قدرك يعلو قلبك يصفو سامح أنت الرابح سامح وتعايش كي نرقى كي نصبح مجتمعا أقوى سامح نتحاور نختلف ولكن لا نتحامل إنسانيتنا تدعونا أن نتواصل إن لم يكن الأمر وفاقا فلتتقبل سامح واصفح أنت الرابح وغدا تؤجر سامح أنت الرابح سامح واصفح واغفر واعفو قدرك يعلو قلبك يصفو سامح أنت الرابح سامح وتعايش كي نرقى كي نصبح مجتمعا أقوى سامح كن يدا بالخير تمتد وهدى بالحب يسعد كل ذات البين إصلاحا يشيد كل جرح القلب بلسم وانشر الخيرات باسا أطلق العفو ودعه يتكلم سامح أنت الرابح سامح واصفح واغفر واعفو قدرك يعلو قلبك يصفو سامح أنت الرابح سامح وتعايش كي نرقى كي نصبح مجتمعا أقوى سامح.
You see, when it comes to current affairs, you listen to MP Radio, the greatest Islamic talk radio station.
Whoa, what was that, Nasheed? That don't sound nothing like the Security Council to me. It sounds a bit more like some of the revolution taking place from Café Ikhwan, is it?
That's it. The Café Ikhwan insurgency is, live and kicking. We're still rooting for a Café Ikhwan slot, even though the Security Council now currently occupies my Café Ikhwan show.
Well, it's no longer an occupation. It has been an
I'll
official.
be
It
honest
is a
with you.
takeover, and we are now the rulers of the show.
I submit, but I never bow my head. But I have to admit that Nasheed, even for Café Ikhwan, was a very, very mellow, softy Nasheed. Mr. Producer, what on earth's been going on? Are you even on air? Can you explain why you played that particular Nasheed after such a hot topic?
It was just the first one I could get hold of.
You thought you'd just kind of balance out the different moods and the vibes that were currently flying in the room right now, yeah? We lost one of our permanent members just a moment ago during the break. He's gone to pay a visit to one of the embassies, well-known embassies, adjacent to the Security Council meeting hall, the round table. So he will shortly join us. This is, of course, you are listening to the Security Council, a no-nonsense current affairs program, and he will pop in any second as he likes, making the ground shaking under his feet.
And leaving
close the door, please, Brother Zain. Yes, the show is waiting for you. All our listeners are awaiting your return. Where exactly did you get to, Brother Zain?
You actually want me to actually answer that question?
Actually, don't answer that question. Actually, don't answer that question. Okay. All right. So, prior to that, we lost 1 hour just talking about that one issue.
Sorry.
We haven't finished talking about that issue yet.
Just before we go on that, I don't know if you guys mentioned it. Did you talk about the producer's choice of Nasheed?
Yeah,
We
we did actually.
Sorry, I missed that part.
That
was a good clarification.
That was part of the Café Ikhwan revolution, but we kind of just stemmed that out again,
Yeah, he gave us some lame excuse, to be honest with you. He wasn't having any of that. He's learning from some of the... you should have said something like, we do not comment on ongoing activities of the security apparatus, or something very nondescript like that. But he said, no, it was the first Nasheed on his playlist. He just played it.
All right.
I think you need to remove that from the playlist. It doesn't suit any of our shows, Mr. Producer. He's just nodding his head. You have a microphone. Why don't you use your microphone?
Do you know what? Because we've got this new system, and I completely
can't hear you. You got to speak into the microphone.
No, because of the new system, and the microphone's in my face for a change, and we're not having to pull and tag away at the microphone to speak. So I'm just getting used to the whole new equipment.
Yeah,
the evolution of the studio,
Mr. Producer. Always with your excuses. Anyways. But
I think there was one point that I think Brother Kaleem mentioned, which he never came round to. I think we didn't have time to ourselves come round. But it comes up, it keeps on rearing its head again and again. It's this word or this term is called British values. And it seems to be in this issue, this issue of Syria, in this issue of grooming, in this issue of schools, in this issue of everything. So what are British values? What do you interpret them as?
I think it's all about going down to the pub and getting extremely drunk, and I don't know, that's quite British.
Bit of football with that maybe, and
bit of footy,
and
some bangers and mash in the morning,
and some swearing here and there, and sure.
Sounds thoroughly British to me. But those are unafraid. What should I say? Should we?
But Mr. Cameron,
shall we steal their thunder or blow their bubble? That's something that Muslims are never gonna actually do. So I'm sorry to tell you that Muslims will never be British. Then, in that case, I know a lot of Muslims probably do. So I'm not talking about the bangers and mash. That's perfectly halal as long as it's not got any pork in it. But I mean, talking about drinking and swearing. And a lot of Muslims sometimes, God guide them. They're kind of gone off, off the rails a little bit. But I think all Muslims who do engage in that kind of thing, they know that it's not very Islamic or very Muslim to do so. And that's really, even Muslims who don't practice their religion, they still identify themselves as Muslims, you see, and they understand that there's there are certain rules and things that they have to respect, even if they are maybe currently not following those kind of basic tenets of the religion.
I think there was a video that was kind of going around regarding just an incident that took place, but
a very British guy.
Yes, a very British
I
guy.
mean, sorry.
You're gonna go. You're gonna.
Oh,
Brother Zain, he's coming.
Tertiary.
Go on, Brother Zain. I know you're about to veto what Brother Khabab is about to say.
Let's not. No, not really. I was just going to say let's not go into individuals on this one. But
Yeah.
But regarding integration, I got a text here saying someone texting, no name again, says on one hand there is talk of integrating Muslim community, and on the other hand, you got the talk of suspecting and criminalizing Muslim community. They need to make up their minds. That's
right.
Yeah. So
did he give a name? Who
no
texted
names.
him?
No names on this one.
Well,
We
thank
like
you
a
to
bit
him.
of the anonymous hackers that like to.
But there is that is the point though, in terms of like you know, the standard of we want you guys to integrate. We want all the Muslims to integrate, and then the other hand you got saying like, well, you know, we don't like you Muslims. Here's some legislation just to bung you up.
Well,
yeah, I
if
mean,
you want to talk about integration,
I find it racist, Brother Khabab. I find that racist. You need to integrate. I mean, that's just a very complicated or fancy way of saying you coloured people or you Muslims different to us need to become more like us. Otherwise, we can't accept you. You need to become like me.
No, it's,
But
I don't even think it's about colour. I think it's
that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
You Muslim people
Yeah.
or people that are different than us, you need to stop being different and become like us. You got to become the
we
the
dictate.
drone
They
British citizen,
the
conveyor belt British citizen.
No, the talk about we dictate what your religion's about, not you dictate what your religion's
and
about.
who you even are.
we'll tell you what is acceptable, what is not acceptable.
No, it's gone down
Yeah.
to the system where they're looking into belief. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
Oh,
They're looking into beliefs. They're looking into people's ideas.
That's right.
You know, thoughts and
Thoughts, yeah.
trying to
I
find
mean-
crimes in people's head.
This is
bit-
becoming
bit
a
like
thought
the
police,
Minority
you know,
Report.
No, the thought police. This is exactly where is it going to end? How much are they going to
Thought
go
crime.
into?
Thought crimes.
Yeah.
This is what Orwell was talking about
absolutely.
many years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so this is... I've still got a format to follow, Brother Zain. There's some
Sorry,
very
sorry.
valid points there by Brother Zain and by the text person who
But
sent
from your 18 articles, I don't think we can go through all of them.
You can easily go, because I've got them highlighted here, so you can only take one or two
No, mate,
paragraphs.
that ain't happening. No 18
But
articles.
listen, it's still my show, and even if you've rebranded it, just like the government did, it's still what it always was, my show.
Yeah.
Even though it's called the Security Council.
It's the Security
All right.
Council.
Okay, it's still all right. It's the
You
Security
don't want to
Council.
hear. You don't want to hear the gunshots.
I thought you vetted these guys. Didn't you pat them down, Mr. Producer, before they come in?
We got authorization of getting
No firearms.
Hang on.
In the,
We're
in
the
the
ones who
studio.
give-
We're the
Okay.
ones. We got
Otherwise,
authorization to get.
Zimbabwe would be shooting the United States, and Nigeria would be shooting. You know,
We'll be having Robert
listen.
Mugabe on the loose.
Listen, we
Yeah,
got
and
we got authorization for drones
good
here.
luck, Django Jonathan would be, letting out the 50 cal and everything like that.
Then you have Desmond Two Guns. So,
Desmond Two Guns. I mean, all hell would break loose. So, Mr. Producer, we need a better, vetting procedure, especially for our door. It's probably hire a bouncer.
I think you're good to pat
I
down
think-
before you walk into the studio.
but I thought
Yeah,
you had.
definitely,
I thought you had
definitely.
your security guard there, Bush.
Yeah, he's acting a bit funny today. He's a bit hungry, I think.
Who, Bush?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard him meow very much.
We gave him a second round of food. I can still see it sitting there.
When you went out from the studio a second ago.
Yep.
That's okay. How's Bush doing anyway?
I think he's gone into hiding.
Much like the real Bush, I guess.
George W.
Okay, all right. Because I think The Hague is looking for Mr. Dabia. All right, look, I've got a format. Listen, I know you can't go through 18. We've already spent an hour on this, and 18 articles just not going to be possible. But I just want to read from Mr. Cameron's announcement. I think day before yesterday. Was it yesterday itself? Monday. Yeah, it was yesterday then.
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
So yesterday, he made this announcement. It's quite a long announcement, but I'm going to read one bit here. I've highlighted. It says, "Let's be clear about the source of the threat that we face. The terrorist threat was not created by the Iraq War 10 years ago. It existed even before the horrific attacks on 9/11, themselves some time before the Iraq War. This threat cannot be solved simply by dealing with the perceived grievances over Western foreign policy, nor can it be dealt with by addressing poverty, dictatorship, or instability in the region. ... Moving on. The root cause of this threat to our security is quite clear. It is a poisonous ideology of Islamist extremism that is condemned by all faiths and by all faith leaders. It believes in using the most brutal forms of terrorism to force people to accept a warped worldview and to live in an almost medieval state, a state in which its own citizens would suffer unimaginable brutality, including barbaric beheadings of those who refuse to convert to their warped version of Islam, the enslavement and raping of women, and the widespread slaughter of Muslims by fellow Muslims, and of course, the exporting of terrorism abroad. Let me finish with this last comment of his. So this is about a battle between Islam on the one hand and extremists who want to abuse Islam on the other. End quote. There's a lot more he says here, but you can just see.
Very clear.
Let me just look at the last statement. This is about a battle between Islam on one hand and extremists who want to abuse Islam on the other. He's batting the ball straight into the Muslims' court, saying, "Mate, it's your problem. You Muslims need to sort this out. There's an issue in your community. There's something wrong with your religion."
Hang on.
Yeah.
Who made him?
The Mufti.
The Muslim scholar, or the scholar who can dictate what Islam is and what Islam isn't. Who told him what's extremism? And what's this about raping and?
So I keep on
It's ridiculous. This sounds like if I were to tell you, Habab, exactly. If I were to tell you, Paul Golding from the Britain First or EDL, or even Nick Griffin, or even Nigel Farage had said this, then you would say, yeah, that's the kind of racist rhetoric that comes out of them kind of,
individuals.
Yeah. But this is exactly, I mean, look at this guy. He's saying a state in which its own citizens would suffer so and so.
So tell me for history.
Yeah.
What Islamic state condoned
raping
women and beheading whatever it may
I
be?
think he might have slightly got confused with the cross and the crescent, and maybe the Crusaders raping women, and he thought it's all religion,
Crusades.
and I think he got a bit confused.
That is well
basically.
documented that the Crusades, there were a lot of rapes taking place under the Christian Crusade launched from England here, this country. Of
Meaning the
Dr.
English,
Mr. David
British Crusaders
Yeah.
went to foreign lands and raped women.
Yeah, I think this is the problem. Their own legacy kind of haunts them because they think most other people are just like them.
It's just ridiculous. The whole statement is ridiculous, really. Saying that this is actually going back in the ideological front as well, because he's talking about the caliphate, like Brother Kaleem was speaking about.
Yeah, this is completely false. It's completely false.
And he's trying to knock down the whole argument that most of the people are saying is Western foreign policy.
First of all, it's false because Islam does not condone any of these things, number one. And number two, even if we're not talking about Islam, let's talk about a rebel group, an armed rebel group. Like, as you heard, Brother Kaleem has his own objections on a couple of those, a few of the things that they do, right? But even if we're talking about that group, I mean, to say they're raping women and doing this and doing that, it's just stupidly. I mean, it's absolutely wrong. It's false. It's not true.
Ridiculous. Really.
Where's Mr. Cameron come? And it's worrying for me because this is the leader of this country. This is the person who decides whether people go to war or not. This is the person who's leading a nation, quite a powerful nation, even though it's not as powerful as it may have been in the past, but still a very important player in the international community. And this is the kind of ideas and the kind of ignorance that he suffers from when it comes to the religion of Islam.
Looks like he's
and
reading
Muslims.
from tabloid newspapers. More like this is my source of information.
If you were to actually take it back and then just pretend that was coming out of America a few years ago, who do you think that said that?
George
Bush.
Georgie would come up and say something like that.
That's right.
Not Galloway. Not Galloway. Sorry.
No. Not Galloway.
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Bush, yeah. He'll come up and say things like that. I mean, it sounds really, right-wing, fanatical kind of talk.
Here's another misleading piece. I already read this, and he said here that the terrorist threat was not created by Iraq war, and this is a statement that he made yesterday. Okay, after the the whole so-called ISIS thing, and the so-called threat that ISIS poses to the UK. Right. My question is, he's saying here that this threat existed long time ago, long before 9/11, during 9/11, and before the Iraq war that they were involved in waging that war. I was like, that's not true. We already spoke about this when we opened the show, and we said very clearly that, guys, ISIS didn't actually exist. In fact, Al-Qaeda did not even exist in Iraq before the US invasion of Iraq. So there was no terrorist threat like that in the UK. 7/7 didn't take place, before any of these types of wars were waged.
Just one thing, it's just amazing because obviously you've kind of highlighted this article. I'm just looking at the article that you've just kind of read the extract from.
Yeah.
Literally, the little part just before it makes it very clear of how they are scaremongering. He says here, we now believe that at least 500 people have travelled from Britain to fight in Syria. And then he goes on to say, and potentially Iraq.
Yeah.
So they keep on putting this figure of 500, going to with ISIS, going with Iraq, where actually they know the majority of them have actually gone to Syria. And
hang on. Even that 500 figure.
Even that figure, like we said, is very much not
conclusive. And then let's take it back here. So any Muslim, regardless of what he does, what the intention is going to Syria, even if it was for humanitarian reasons or whatever the reasons may be, it's always assumed that he's going
the Boris kind of what do you call it, principle, the Boris principle.
That's right. So again, this is
you're guilty until you're proven innocent.
It's ridiculous.
So here, but the point being is, look, he talks about here that there are potential. Okay, we like I said, let's just for argument's sake say yes, there are 500.
Yeah.
But the point being is they are majority in Syria. But to make the issue seem connected together, because look, they're all actually maybe in Iraq as well. Maybe all 500 have gone to Iraq.
Yeah.
And most of the time they actually said, yeah, we got 500 of them have travelled to Iraq. So
just for our listeners' information, that this speech is an extract that we read from it directly from the www.gov.uk government/speeches threat level statement directly from the Prime Minister himself. So this is their own. This is not something that we're getting from a third party. This is directly from the government website. There's a lot of stuff. Before we do go on to the other stories, I know we haven't even finished this one properly. I'm going to wrap it up. But before I do, it's 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. Do send us your text messages and calls. We've got a couple of texts actually, but on some of the other issues that we haven't arrived to yet, which we're going to take in shortly as soon as we get there. So keep your texts coming in, please, and we'll be very interested to get your calls actually on this. It's always nice to hear a human voice. But if you are not able to, if you're driving, if you're tied up, if you're driving, you shouldn't be definitely texting anyone. Yeah, or if you're just shy, don't be shy. Give us a call. But if you feel like you just want to drop a quick message, then by all means send us a text message or a WhatsApp message. And obviously these new legislation that they're talking about, there are some key elements. This is about talking about banning a temporary ban on British people who are maybe in Syria fighting the regime, banning them from returning to Britain. So these people are effectively without a country now. They will go, they're British citizens, they've gone abroad because they've seen how the Assad regime is beheading people, raping people. There are videos of this kind of stuff. I mean, I watched one yesterday. I was so appalled to see that, as it's just as gruesome as all the other videos that people are very much up in arms about. But nobody's bothered about this video. I mean, I saw a guy who I thought was already dead, but he was alive, and they were stabbing him alive.
Yeah, seen
repeatedly, swearing, threatening to rape his female members of his family. And this is not a joke. It's not just like a swear word. I mean, the rapes are happening in Syria, so this is a reality. And so when these guys are threatening, they mean it, and they are doing it. And I thought he was dead. They were kicking him, they were stabbing him, and they were slicing open his back. I thought this is just a corpse, right? But then I'm hearing the guy. I mean, the subtitles are there. The guy saying, "Let me shoot him. Let me kill him. Let me kill him." I said, "No, don't let him." I was so shocked. I'm losing my words right now. That the guy was still alive. This is the government forces of President Bashar al-Assad, and then what the guy went on to do was he went and said, "Let me take his fingers," and he literally started cutting off the man's finger on video. Okay, and then he was complaining, "Give me another knife. I need another one," because it wasn't cutting through properly. And the man was still alive. He was moving. I realized he was still moving. And I was so shocked to my core. I was shaking, thinking like, how horrendous is this? But it seems Mr. Cameron doesn't really bother about these types of videos. It doesn't make the news, these kind of videos.
I mean, this is the same regime that the US and UK are now thinking about actually joining up with this regime and actually fighting whether it's ISIS or Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, the Sunni resistance.
That's right. And this is actually, of course, one of the main agendas for today. I just want to say, before, I know Brother Zain's really eager to move on to that topic. quickly, who else has criticised these so-called proposed powers by David Cameron? Who else has criticised? Well, a very well-known politician by the name of Paddy Ashdown. He was the leader, former Liberal Democrat leader, okay, and also the former High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay, he's also criticised David Cameron for ill-judged rhetoric that he says could alienate ordinary Muslims and hamper the battle to defeat, the so-called jihadists and so on and so forth. So Paddy
I do have a theory, which is which I would like to share, which is that it's very clear. They talk about de-radicalizing. They talk about getting Muslims to, condemn, and then getting people to be very much not extreme. But all of the measures.
Hasan.
Well, yeah, all of them to become Usama Hasan, maybe. But the point being, all the actions that they are taking are only pushing people who were probably nowhere, even the word extreme is the wrong word to really use, but people who were probably weren't very aware of what was happening, but it's making them more aware and making them more frustrated. And then you have
radicalizing,
and it is radicalizing in that sense, in their terminology, radicalizing these people.
So
it feels like what's happening is that what they want to do is basically radicalize everybody, and then they can just
punish them,
just punish the whole community. It's a lot more easier. Just say all you Muslims are the same.
They don't even need to do that. They're doing it right now. Like Brother Kaleem said, that, I mean, even if you take that population of 500, that number 500,
it's a drop in the ocean of how many Muslims actually live in the UK.
Absolutely.
And when compared with the Jews that are British who are going abroad, it's a much smaller number than the Jews who are fighting in the Israeli armed forces, who just recently killed roughly 2,000 civilians.
Well, people say, let's not, for example, when Israel... they say they're punishing Hamas, but they're punishing the population in that sense.
That's right.
It's the same thing, same concept here. Let's punish those who would be terrorists and all that. But it's
the exact same.
Let's without punishing them, they're actually punishing everybody, all the Muslims.
That's right.
And this is it's happening to Muslims now. But I'm telling you, the road that they're on is going to happen to the rest of the community as well.
It's going to start from the children.
No, absolutely.
That's where the whole strategy is coming from cradle to the grave. As
I wanted to say, Brother Zain, that excellent point you made about how they're not punishing actually who they are calling, terrorists or Hamas, for example. They are actually deliberately punishing, systematically punishing the civilian population of Palestine.
And then they blame
Gaza.
the civilians, saying they're the ones who had elected, they're the ones who supported Hamas.
But isn't this the same rhetoric? Yes, the civilians voted Hamas into power, so therefore they're guilty, and so we must kill them. Isn't this the exact same rhetoric that the Western world, our government, and the US government has been saying and criticizing Al-Qaeda and ISIS for? Isn't this exactly why they're opposed to the beheading of James Foley, saying that they're trying to punish America and the American airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq right now by actually taking it out on journalists and so on and so forth? But that's exactly what Israel is doing, and yet you stood by watching that and think that's perfectly la-di-da. And this is exactly the same rhetoric that was used by the late Osama bin Laden, and when he said that these people, the people in the Trade Center are guilty, they have committed some crime by voting in for a government that went to war. They did not vote that government out. They killed people this kind of, or they supported the Israeli regime since the 1948. That was really the reason. He said, you guys are guilty for establishing this illegal state of Israel and stuff like that. You voted this regime into power. But my point is, I see zero difference here between that justification and the justification being used by the Israeli military in killing civilians, saying you guys are the ones who voted Hamas in, and their terrorist actions, you're going to have to pay for that yourselves. I see zero difference. Why is there this blatant hypocrisy when it comes to civilians that are white and civilians who are outside of this country? I mean, why? Why is this happening? I mean, clearly, I want to ask Brother Kaleem. He said it's blatant Islamophobia. It's Islamophobia is a type of racism. Technically, Islam is not a race. We know that, but that's just splitting hairs. To be honest with you, all right, that's just a way for racists to hide behind their racism by calling it, well, Islam is not a race. It's a religion. It's an ideology that you ascribe to.
There was a text that was sent in, and I believe it's more of a quote from an individual. I don't know who this person is really. But it mentions here that only savage people kill with machetes, civilized people kill with drones and cruise missiles.
Someone called
quote from Ben White.
What does that say again? Read that again.
It says here that only savage people kill with machetes, civilized people kill with drones and cruise missiles.
Very good point there.
And I think that kind of links in with the whole point just before the speech of David Cameron, talking about how these are barbaric people and want to take us back to the Dark Ages and the medieval ages and all of these kind of things.
But if you can't see it and if it's not there like that, then it's okay. I mean, when the drone's killed, there's no cameras around recording the chaos and the destruction underneath those bombs. But if it was there. If those videos did come out, then maybe...
And the collateral that comes with that, even if they did target the extremists that they were after, which most of the time they don't.
No, it's clearly noted and factual that they don't actually just... there's more civilians and the collateral is more higher than the intended target.
I also wanted to point out some more criticism. I think this gentleman was actually on Newsnight last week or yesterday, I think on the 30th of August. What he's said in his letter to the Guardian newspaper on their reporting of the recent threat from ISIS, in inverted commas, he says here, I'm just going to read a quick sentence from this quite lengthy letter. He says here, by your unconsidered amplification, you help lay the ground for the security services to demand emergency laws to yet further constrain our liberties. Those same security services who so completely failed to prepare for ISIS and yet who keep their jobs. The Guardian has led the way in explaining Snowden. Please may we have the same attention to detail here. This is a short piece actually from his entire letter by a man called Simon Cox, COX, migration lawyer from the Open Society Justice Initiative. Now, I'm not suggesting that I agree with all of his other different types of views, but he's actually openly criticised these legislation, how they are actually inhibiting the civil liberties of British citizens. So there's been a variety of different people, and I want to come. There was one non-Muslims, Paddy Ashdown, and we talked about how this gentleman, the lawyer there, has also criticised them. Let's look at a Muslim organisation for a change, and we're gonna. Harun Rashid Khan, Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. This is a article from the Guardian, by the way. Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, MCB, raised concerns about the Prime Minister's anti-terrorism strategy amid signs of a wider impasse in relations between the government and Muslim groups. Open quote. And they need to be talking to us and others to understand what it is that's leading these boys down this route, Khan told The Guardian. Part of the problem is the constant talk of legislation, harassment and monitoring, stripping people of their passports. This is what's leading young people towards radicalism. End quote. This is exactly what.
So the solution, so the point is the legislation they're trying to bring in to tackle this issue of radicalization is actually is the cause of the radicalization of these young people.
That's it. And he goes on to say, open quote, "This is really unprecedented in what we're seeing right now with young people," he said. People are watching the news and thinking, these people are getting slaughtered. Something. Now we've put all these people out of the country and we're saying you can't come back in. Okay, so this is something that is the view of, is he the Secretary General? Yeah, he's the Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. And the Muslim Council of Britain, by the way, happened to be the biggest umbrella Muslim organisation that I know of, who has the support of, it says here, the MCB has got the mandate from 500 organisations who represent Muslims from all walks of life. Okay, so... Don't
get me wrong, there are sometimes I do disagree with the MCB, but this is a... It's a good statement. This is a good statement that MCB came out with.
I've seen a different tone actually this time round with MCB. As you said, there are sometimes things that I might not always agree with when it comes to MCB. But on this particular occasion, they seem to be taking the right direction with that. I know you want to move on. The last thing I want to finish with on this point, Brother Zain, is we'll come back to Cage again. Why? Because they've written a fantastic article, or should I say the title actually says that Cage condemns the Prime Minister's fear-mongering, rhetoric. So they've done something really good here. And you'll be thinking, why Cage again? Oh, they just had Kaleem from Cage. Yeah, well, of course we did. But this is actually indicative of the fact that there are not more organizations out there in the Muslim community who are, saying these kinds of things. There are too many Muslims out there falling over themselves, ready to apologize and say sorry, or, we condemn this and that, we distance ourselves from this and that.
The sorry Muslims, yeah?
Yeah, the sorry Muslims. What was the proverb? The House Muslim proverbs. You need to look that up. I sent that to you the other day, Khabab, and read us a couple of the House Muslim proverbs. Some fantastic stuff from Pir Shab Kalandar Tabrizi, I think his name is. He's on Twitter. He's a tweet. Don't really know who he is.
I was going to say that's probably his.
That's his nickname. That's not really his real name. He's quite a comedian on Twitter, but he makes some clever jokes on Twitter. So we'll find those for you. Okay, so.
Was it an apology a day keeps Islamophobia at bay?
Yeah, fantastic. An apology a day keeps Islamophobia at bay. There's another one. There is one more. Really,
just for everyone out there, I'm sorry.
Me too. I'm sorry, guys. Okay,
we're all sorry.
So it's not happy Muslims. The video should have been sorry Muslims.
Sorry Muslims.
We'll dance for you guys.
For apologizing.
So, oh my God. If you disagree with anything we're saying, call us and we'll handle it on the Security Council. We'll take you on the chin.
We're sorry again.
We like
Okay, so coming back to Cage's statement, they've condemned the the fear-mongering rhetoric of the Prime Minister. I can't read all of it because they've made some really excellent points. There's a few of them. I'm going to read two or three very quickly, inshallah. Number one. This is a wild overreaction by UK government that will lead to further curtailment of civil liberties and abuse of the rule of law. Passport removal powers have always existed and have already been used against several individuals. Today's developments can only be seen as another opportunistic grab for power by the security state after an escalation in the climate of fear. Number two, such a policy raises questions and serious concerns around how such decisions will be made and on whom it will be applied. Will aid workers and journalists have their passports confiscated? Will this apply to only those Britons that are of Muslim background, even if they are medics, aid workers or journalists? What scrutiny will exist for such decisions, and how can an individual challenge such decisions? Number three, we'll take your... we've got some text coming in. We're going to take them shortly as soon as I'm finished with this article here. Number three, the answer is not to further criminalize the community by removing their rights without due process and by extending anti-terror laws. This will only fuel disenfranchisement and anger amongst Muslims in Britain. In its report, Prevent, a cradle to the grave police state by Cage has documented how the Prevent program has treated Muslims as a suspect community. It has alienated the Muslim community to such an extent that it is now a cause of radicalization. Any further extensions will turn the Muslim community into a criminal community subject to McCarthyist-style witch hunts. Number four, since the start of the Arab Spring on 18th December 2010, hundreds of British nationals travelled to the Middle East, including to countries such as Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria and Iraq. During that period of time, there has not been a single incident of British national returning to the UK having been involved in plots to commit acts of political violence. Based on the current experience, the threat level seems to be widely exaggerated. So there's more 5, 6, 7 and 8 and they are extremely valid points that we really can't read all of them because Brother Zain he's got his fingers around my neck already.
No, you can read that on their webpage. So what's the title?
Thank you for reminding us. As Brother Kaleem had said earlier, it's www.kaguk.org. Let me spell that for you. www.cageuk.org. And you can find this statement there.
We've got a text in from Brother Musa. He says here, the only way to really make the government happy is to become totally assimilated, where you give up all your identity and faith. In other words, specifically Islam. However, unfortunately, even then, the reality will be you will always be a second-class citizen, regardless of how little you practice Islam. So
very, very true. Very, very true. Some excellent comments coming there. We've got another one, is it?
I think Yeah, we've been getting some
Keep them coming.
checks in for our House Muslim proverbs. I think
Oh, really?
our listeners have been listening in.
Thank
and,
you very much.
So
for
we've got
being
the
on
other
top of
one
this.
now, which is don't delay, apologize today.
Don't delay, apologize today. House Muslim proverb. Hashtag House Muslim proverbs. The word House Muslim is a play on the another expression or term, isn't it? It's called
The original term
by brother Shabazz Malik,
Malcolm X.
also known as Malcolm X. What did he say exactly? Might be a little bit politically incorrect for some people, but it's a quote from Malcolm X.
And I use the word house niggas and field niggas. So
Niggas or Negroes?
Negroes, sorry.
Yeah. So I mean,
Apologies for that.
he did make that distinction between house Negroes and field Negroes, and the house Negro being the one who is one of those turncoat, boot-licking kind of.
And the house Negroes was the one that
slave.
he was the Uncle Tom, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was the one. He was the one who
He was always saying yes sir, no sir.
No, he was the slave.
Yes,
that had,
master.
Yeah, he was a slave that had the privileges, or what is known as privileges, who ate the leftovers from the housemaster.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and that was a privilege. He was allowed to stay inside
the house.
Inside the house, yeah. But
And
he was
not
still a
sleep
slave.
with the animals,
Still a slave.
like the field Negroes, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this slave got to that level of status that he considers it to be a privilege. He got there by, of course, being a very obedient, a very good house Negro. I mean, he did
Absolutely.
exactly what the
Absolutely.
white master told him to do. He believed in what a good Negro is supposed to be, and he abided by the the rules and the say so. And he looked out for the white master when he was
Sure.
away. He would be the one who would be whipping and beating the slaves if they were any of them out of line. So this is the kind of African American that the previous generation of white people kind of wanted to create, and this is where the play on that word house Negro to house Muslim has come, where a lot of Muslims are kind of being described as house Muslims there.
Absolutely.
So hashtag House Muslim proverbs. If you've got any more, put the
Please send them in as well.
Yeah, please send them in via text and put it on our Twitter. Follow us at Middle Path Radio. Middle Path Radio. Okay, so some more House Muslim proverbs, please. The
And
number is 07477 080 248. I'm sorry, Brother Khabbab. I know you like to read that number.
I think we have to pull the mic away from
me.
Brother
One more
Ahmed.
time. 07477 080 248. We've covered the issues now. One is now, Brother Zain, you're talking about the UK-US alliance, the axis of evil.
Now just reading on the article. Actually, I think Mr. Wiki's got those articles up at the moment, but it's regarding the politicians that came up and was talking about. Sorry, guys. Was talking about how the US and UK are now thinking or being pushed towards having an alliance or with Assad to fight the Islamist militant force, as they call it. So, you got those articles up?
I do have some very lovely words from the former head of the British Army. He's not a nobody. This guy is the leader of
He's
the
a
armed
somebody.
leader of the armed forces in the UK, and he's not just another. He's also described as a lord here, General Lord Danat.
Yes.
Former head of British Army says the West must cooperate with Syrian dictator Assad to defeat ISIL. And this is a fantastic. It's in the Telegraph, and you know what I'm going to do after the show? I'm going to tweet a lot of these articles out on the. I'm not very good at multitasking, although I would have done it on the show. So those are there for your reference. Okay, so what does it say? I mean, the article actually reads. It's by Matthew Holehouse, political correspondent for Telegraph. He says here, he writes, Britain must cooperate with President Assad, the Syrian dictator, in order to confront ISIS, the former head of the army.
So he doesn't say dictator, does it?
It does say that.
Really?
It actually says that. You think I'm making this stuff up?
Oh my
Come on,
God.
guys. Britain must cooperate with President Assad, the Syrian dictator, in order to confront ISIS. I'm only always reading from whatever's in front of me. I'm not inserting my own, I would normally say. That was my own emphasis or my own addition there.
He actually mentions dictator.
This journalist has, yes, credit to him. Okay, so Britain must cooperate with President Assad, the Syrian dictator, in order to confront ISIS, the former head of the army has said. Yeah, go on. General Lord Dannatt, the former chief of general staff, said the West must secure the permission of the Syrian government in order to launch airstrikes on Islamist militants. The time will come, in inverted commas or in quotation marks, for British Tornado jets to move from surveillance missions to bombing raids, he said. The remarks came as US General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, said strikes inside Syria are necessary to defeat the organisation. General Lord Dannatt's comments come almost a year since David Cameron lost a Commons vote authorising airstrikes on President Assad in response to chemical weapons attacks on civilians, action that would likely have toppled him from power.
Hold on.
Let me finish reading this. I'm just in the flow of things, right?
You love reading this, Mr. WikiLeaks, man. Seriously.
Let me carry on reading, please. Because there's some...
Julian, you need to stop.
Seriously, listen to this.
Julian.
This is a journalist, right? This guy is good, right? This is what he's saying. Britain and its allies have repeatedly called for Assad to step down to bring the 3-year civil war that spawned ISIS to end. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Britain has been actually telling Assad to get off his premiership or whatever they call it, right?
His throne.
His throne. Okay, to step down to bring the 3-year civil war that spawned ISIS. Right? He's saying clearly that Assad's dictatorship and actions, his savagery is the reason why ISIS exists. All right, and that the British government has been, and the US government has been apparently calling for Assad to sit down. However, now it seems like they are very interested in being buddy chuds, okay, kushti bedfellows with this terrible dictator. ISIS must be opposed, confronted and defeated in Iraq and Syria before it spreads through the region, said Lord Dannatt, as he told BBC Radio 4. The Syrian dimension has got to be addressed, he said. You cannot deal with half a problem, he said. The old saying, my enemy's enemy is my friend, has begun to have some resonance with our relationship with Iran. Yeah, look at this. I think it's going to have some resonance with our relationship with Assad as well, says Lord Dannatt. I think whether it is above the counter or below the counter, a conversation has got to be held with him. Do you hear that? He's openly saying, whether you do it, in secret, guys.
So
we got
the gist of this, what he's been saying now. So
there's more.
But hang on. The question is this: so Assad and his regime. We heard throughout today's show, and we know from previous research and shows and so forth and whatnot, that the Assad's regime has done much more atrocities, committed much more atrocities.
That's right.
Than ISIL or ISIS or whatever it may be has so-called caused those, whatever atrocities they're alleged to cause. So what's the difference? Why is it that the blood of those Syrians are cheaper than the blood of, say, for example,
do you have the stats of how many have been killed by ISIS? By any chance?
By ISIS, no, I don't.
But I can tell you that the regime, with the UN last put the count last week when they gave it was 191,000.
That's right, 200,000.
This is according to New UN stats. But obviously, we know that there's far more than that. But this is what they have recorded: is 191,000 people have been killed by Assad,
and 4 million, or was it 4 million displaced?
No. 9 million refugees, of which 3 million are externally displaced, and there are 6.5 million internally displaced.
And this is like the Yazidis and the Peshmerga of Iraq who were displaced in
and that 9 million. That 9 million is 40%.
The Zanzibar or something mountain. And how many of them were displaced? By ISIS.
The numbers started coming down.
Yeah, the numbers
came down quite rapidly.
To a couple of hundred.
Of that 9 million that are displaced, who are refugees, that makes up 40% of the Syrian population. So 40% of the Syrian population are refugees.
But you see, they're not minorities. You see, the West and the UK, they only care about minorities. And Nigerian girls as well, by the way.
Yeah, and then like I said, and of that 191,000 that have been killed, this is UN figures. Just under 10,000 were children, just over 6,000 were women. These are just numbers that have been recorded officially, but we know the numbers are far worse. It doesn't
matter what the UN says.
But I don't think anywhere, even if we just take the 6,000 women that were being killed by Assad, You know, somehow I don't think ISIS have gone anywhere near that number of people that they have killed. You know, it seems very much disproportionate.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what he's saying. You know, that whole that old adage, as you know, my enemy's enemy is my friend. Okay, you know, he's bringing these old English proverbs. My enemy's enemy is my friend. You know, starts to have resonance.
Where is the moral ground in this? I don't really understand
the ethics.
Where's the British values?
My question is, you know, he's talking about my enemy's enemy, right? So their enemy here, he's referring to is ISIS, and ISIS's enemy is the UK-US's friend. ISIS's enemy, they're saying, according to them, is Assad, right? My question is, how come ISIS's enemy is suddenly their friend? Why isn't, excuse me, one second, if ISIS is their enemy for killing civilians, why isn't Assad also their enemy for having killed even more civilians, for being the reason why ISIS even came?
Or even better to say, why are they not then saying, okay, if they want to have work alongside the enemies of ISIS, then there are other rebel groups who have been in conflict with ISIS. You know, why not work with them then? You know,
but that's my question, because they're not going to be working with these rebel groups. They're going to be actually killing them. It's not just ISIL. You know, don't get me wrong. This is not a war with ISIS. This is a war.
Exactly what this show is about. Yeah. This has got nothing to do with ISIS.
Nothing to do with
Syrian
ISIS.
revolution.
No, we're not going to come here and say, "Oh, we condemn this and we condemn that," because it's nothing to do with that. That's a sideshow. It's a charade.
Absolutely.
The whole thing's a charade. As Brother Kalim was saying, the whole thing's it's a song and dance. It's theatrics. Okay, it's to detract from the real issues. And the real issues here, as Brother Zain is saying, is that it's nothing to do with ISIS. It's to do with supporting Assad in the barbarism that we can see in Syria.
Now, in the name of ISIS, or they just
in the name of fighting ISIS and Islamic extremism, so you know,
they're going to wipe out.
But is this new policy? Is this something? Why are you guys surprised? Because, as you said, it's not about ISIS. This, in the name of fighting ISIS, what they're doing is doing what they've always been doing, which is propping up these murderous butcher dictators in the Middle East, like Bashar
and
al-Assad,
securing the borders of Israel.
and securing their friends who are also similarly bloodthirsty, you know, tyrants in the Middle East. So this is exactly the reason as to why that's been happening. Who else has been saying this? It's not just Mr. Lord Denat. It's also a very senior UK politician. He's not just an MP, okay?
He's a sir.
He's a sir. His name is Sir Malcolm Rifkind, one of the UK's most senior MPs. This is in RT.com. He told the Financial Times in an exclusive interview that the horrific murder of American journalist James Foley highlights the urgent need to take action against the group who's so and so. And he goes on and says ISIS need to be eliminated, and he carries on. And then he makes the statement that they need to work closely with Assad in order to eliminate ISIS.
I think one thing just before we move on, on the subject, none of us are saying what ISIS have done or alleged to be have done. Yeah, we're not condoning it. We're not saying it's good or anything like that, or anything on that level.
Yes, but I don't want to even open that question. I don't want to open that question because I think it's obvious, and you know, like
it's just making sure that the people don't misunderstand us.
The whole point of this discussion is to put things into perspective. Look at things outside the box.
That's right.
Let's look at what's been just put onto our front screens, what we read in the newspapers, and what's there on our kind of breaking news feeds from the mainstream news agencies. Is think beyond that.
That's right.
There's a message being pumped out. Hang on a minute. Where's that coming from?
And it says here, although Mr. Rifkind, Sir Rifkind, okay, although he made it clear, I might get in trouble for that. Because I watched that video, I might also get in trouble for that. Actually, I did not watch that video, but anyways, if you're a Muslim today and you don't say sorry, you could get in trouble for that. Although he made it clear. Sorry,
I do have another proverb. Just I thought
before you give your proverb, let me hear what Sir Rifkind has got to say. So, although he made it clear he does not support the Assad regime in principle, Rifkind reluctantly emphasized that, open quote, sometimes you have to develop relationships with people who are extremely nasty in order to get rid of people who are even nastier. End quote. I mean, is this a joke? ISIS is worse than Assad? Is this a joke?
Just look at the facts here. We were speaking about the facts earlier on. They're ridiculous. This proves the fact that this is not.
How do these guys become sirs? You know, it must be easier. And I'm going to stand up and try and do something like this because, you know, if people who have zero, intellect are standing up to say something like this and becoming sirs, and lords. This is the former head of the UK army. These are the kind of people that take people to war. Kill
Absolutely.
other, make decision to wage war and take lives. I'm very worried for the future of this country if these are the kind of people who are sitting in the establishment, who are getting rewarded with lordships and what do you call them, sirdoms or whatnot. Yeah. Knighthoods, says Mr. Why don't you turn your mic on and correct me?
This guy
properly?
doesn't turn his mic on seriously. He's got some
Why don't you
issue.
correct me
Mr.
properly
Producer.
on air, Mr. Producer? They're called what?
Oh, me, sorry. Knighthood. And all these knighthoods are given by the Queen, aren't they?
That's right. The actual
Her
head
Majesty.
of state. She is the head of state of the
Okay,
UK.
can we not attack the royal family here, please? So
Oh, you're one of those
sorry,
sorry
but-
Muslims who love the royal family.
No,
Why is that?
love you guys.
My goodness.
But I think you've gone a bit too far there, Brother Ahmed. So I think we need to take another proverb here, which is that one can apologize while standing, or if not, then sitting, and even when lying down.
Brilliant proverb.
That's
Hashtag
brilliant.
House Muslim proverb.
That's brilliant.
I'm sitting down, and I apologize if I called Sir Malcolm Rifkind somebody of low intellect.
Okay, guys, we have to move on. We've actually overshot our time here.
Yeah, we're done with that one.
Very quickly, I think
It's Dr. Osama. Dr. Osama.
It's got.
Well, actually, I was going to go away from Dr. Osama.
What did you want to talk about?
I don't have time for
I
Dr.
like talking
Osama.
about monkeys. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Evolution. No, we're not talking about Dr. Osama and his
No,
so-called
it's so
fatwa.
quick because there's no article on this. There are, but I'm not reading anything.
30 seconds.
20.
So Dr. Osama, with the help of 5 other so-called imams, have made issued a fatwa, something that is normally associated with extremist scholars. Now, these so-called liberal, voices in the UK are issuing fatwa,
Making takfir and takfiris.
and they were saying that it is haram to join ISIS. Now, I don't really care about the content of the actual. I've downloaded the PDF. I've looked at it. And everything.
It's not about the actual fatwa itself.
I mean, the whole thing is a farce. Again, I use the word charade. The whole thing is a farce because Dr. Usama Hasan is one of those disgraced kind of Muslim personalities in the Muslim community. I don't know anybody who still considers him to be a respectable authority, especially in the scholastic sense, because this gentleman, on account of his accepting evolution theory over intelligent design, using those kind of terms, i.e., he rejecting the original concept that God created Adam and Eve. On that basis alone, even many would go as far as to say that he himself is a heretic, because I think
the point is
he's discredited.
Yeah, and regardless of what the fatwa is, content of the fatwa is, if it was on ISIS or if it was on food or
It's
if
just
it was
newsworthy.
it's just ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, so the House Muslims are now all coming out.
Yeah, and they're not even talking about what is the real issues. They're just going on the side issues on whatever the government wants. Anyway, moving on from that, swiftly, George Galloway.
Mr.
What happened?
Georgie.
Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George.
Come on, don't say that.
We like the guy in the sense that he's quite the speaker.
Yeah. Mr. George Galloway got attacked this week, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Who attacked him?
Well,
it's a horrific attack. He actually sustained some serious injuries.
Sure.
I've got BBC, The Guardian actually again. Why The Guardian? You keep.
I think you're being a bit biased here.
A pattern is emerging here, gentlemen.
Getting
to
paid
get
by
more
these
editorial. We wish. Anyway, George Galloway badly injured in the street attack. Okay, a man is held after Respect MP suffers suspected broken jaw during an attack in London, apparently prompted by prior remarks of his on Israel. So, I mean, he's in hospital. He's out now. That was a story, I think, only about a few days ago. Okay, 29th of August, this article. And he's come out and he's now given an interview with with the press channel that he works with. And he's said quite a few things. Now, I'm not going to play the video, but he did say that he was just posing to take some photographs with some of his fans, roughly the same age as him. In an area normally populated by people who support him, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of nowhere, these are the kind of expression that he used. And he said he actually says a white man launches an unprovoked attack and starts assaulting him, punching him, kicking him, and he's obviously his face is getting hammered by the fists of this man, and he's already on the floor, and he's kicking and he said, this man is going to kick me to death. That's what he was thinking when he was on the floor. So this is quite a horrific attack.
Sure.
And he's then obviously the onlookers, whoever he was with, they managed to pull this violent person off of Mr. Galloway. In fact, one of those two individuals who tried to help him actually also sustained some injury from this man. And he then goes on to make the valid point here, which is that now he's still slightly bruised around the eye. I can see in the video. It's the link's there. It's on YouTube. He says that had this been a Muslim, right? No. Sorry, I jumped the gun here a bit. He said as he got up with the help of the two friends who were there during the attack, he could clearly see that the white man was wearing an IDF T-shirt with Israeli Defense Force written on it and some Hebrew writing on there as well. Okay, and he was and I mean, the video's there. I mean, I don't want to refer to it all, but this is clear. The fact that this person had done it, he was of Jewish origin or Israeli origin,
or at least
supporting Israel, at least, or the Israeli armed forces. He wasn't just supporting Israel. I mean, that's maybe one thing, but supporting the Israeli armed forces,
the Israeli
who are
forces.
responsible for the killing of 2,000 people or more, 2,190 the last time I checked. Okay, so
what did he say?
What Mr. Galloway then goes on to say is that had a Muslim attacked or a pro-Palestinian person gone and attacked a Jew or an Israeli or a pro-Israeli campaigner,
or even an MP,
he says in the video, I'm 6 times elected MP, right? And for me to be attacked in this way and not much is being done about it, the media is not covering the story in this way, and that's probably the reason why you're getting me looking these things up, and it's almost always the Guardian that's coming up with these kind of stories, because the other outlets not taking that kind of interest. And that's exactly his point. If Muslims were to go, or a pro-Palestinian campaigner was to attack a pro-Israel voice like this, the whole media, the world, politicians, Mr. Cameron, everyone included, would be falling over themselves really to condemn this outrage and demanding that Muslims come out to apologize and distance themselves from them. And the House Muslims would have been also lining up, queuing up to give their apology.
Last year, Brother Ahmed, there was an incident that happened in Tower Hamlets where some young people, and we know Tower Hamlets is full of young people, some young people of Muslim origin,
yes,
who weren't really practicing the religion as apparent in how they look and how they behave and what they were doing. But they got into a fight with an American student, and they beat him up. That made national news. Why? They said Muslim youth. Or no. It was actually, they used another word for it. The guys go around. There was a handful of guys at one point a few years ago going around.
Vigilantes.
Doing some vigilante kind of work. They're saying that these are Muslim vigilantes, extremists, attacking an American guy for being, for coming into a so-called Muslim area. Ridiculous. And that made national news. I could not believe that made national news.
And politicians from Tower Hamlets were commenting and making statements about this. But here you see an elected politician being attacked, and I mean, a knife wasn't used. Let me recall you guys to an incident a few years ago where a Muslim girl had used a knife to attack a politician who voted for the government to go to war in Iraq. She did stab this guy, and she's now charged. I think she's doing life in prison
for attempted murder. Yeah,
for attempted murder. Right now, and it was all about Islamic extremism and all about how the religion of Islam, and there's problems with. She was apparently a student of, or she used to listen to Imam Anwar al-Awlaki's talks, and there was a whole hoo-ha about how there's a huge problem with Islamic extremism in the Muslim community, and there's a problem of that nature in the UK. Yet here you are, another MP. Yes, a knife wasn't used. Okay, but he was seeing his life, go past him. He was saying, I was thinking this man is going to kick me to death here. Okay, and but nobody seems to care. Because this time round it's a Jewish or an Israeli individual who's also white at the same time.
This Islamophobia is just rife at the moment, and he's obviously being attacked because he's a pro-Palestinian, pro-Muslim kind of talking, speeches he gives and the support he gives to the Muslims. But just to move on from that, because we've got literally minutes left on this. Person, Katy Hopkins. I was going to say lady, but I think I'll get
this thing.
This thing, Katy Hopkins, and her racist outburst on Twitter. Is ridiculous kind of comments, and she's actually if I remember correctly, a columnist in The Sun, I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that says it all, doesn't it?
I mean that does say it all.
First and foremost, who is this person?
Her name is Katy Hopkins, and I don't want to give her any additional publicity. She is a disgraced journalist. She was initially, first rise to fame or notoriety, not fame, was when she was on The Apprentice, I believe, with Mr. Sugar, Lord Sugar.
Oh, she was an apprentice.
Yeah, she was a failed finger. She bottled it and got out basically before she could get fired. And she actually takes pride in that on her Twitter account, saying so. And what she's become more recently known for is saying things on air, on national TV, on This Morning or other so-called breakfast shows, saying the things that everybody else is thinking about. She's the one that they invite because she doesn't really care about political correctness. I know time is very short, and so she comes out and says some of the most outrageous, often racist or sexist or similar.
So the airhead saying
things.
Everything that everybody's thinking.
Yeah, so she's kind of saying what everybody else is really thinking, right? And this time round, after
sorry, not everyone else in terms of all the racists are thinking.
Yeah, what all the racists are thinking. So why do I say this? Let me give you an example. The truth is, I can't really read this on air. It's that bad. It needs to be censored. It's really that bad. But even the part that you can't beep out. This is the quote. So please forgive me, and may Allah forgive me for rereading what this woman has written. She says here in her tweet, if you follow a religion where your imaginary prophet is and she uses the word that describes a person who abuses young children, the P word. If your imaginary prophet is a such and such person, I suspect you think it's okay to rape young white girls too. And then she uses the B word.
This is referring to recently what's been happening in the news coming out from Rotherham area, where they found a proportionate, what's it called?
Those rape gangs.
The groom gangs and all that.
That story itself is a kind of a red herring, because we know that rape gangs operate across the entire spectrum of the different
race,
communities,
religion, whatever you may be.
In the UK.
The biggest scandal was the Catholic Church.
It's well known that UK has some of the world's international rape, child paedophile kind of child porn ringleaders are based in the UK.
Yeah,
all the celebrities are on it, and even some of the
Stuart
MPs,
Hall,
and,
Jimmy
Lords.
Savile, all of these guys are doing it. The church is doing it.
I think it's important. I don't need to say this, but I want to say it for the sake of it. The guys, the people who are involved in this, the disgusting people who are involved in it, regardless if they claim they're Muslims, they're not doing it at the name of Islam. What don't these people understand? That these guys are not following Islam, hence they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, the religion of these people has got nothing to do with it. Okay, and as you said,
just like the religion of Jimmy Savile and all of these other kind of celebrities.
What they're doing is extremely irreligious. So, as you said, Brother Zain, we don't need to entertain this question. It's absurd and extremely offensive, deeply offensive. Then they want to say, "Why are Muslims so angry? Why do Muslims hate us?" But I'm going to call your mum this and that, and I'm going to insult your dad this way and that way, and I'm going to. They don't realize that to Muslims. One of the part tenet of their faith, an important article of their faith, is that the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, and Allah Himself, of course, first and foremost, they are more important, more valued in a Muslim's life than even their own parents,
even their own life,
Okay, even than all Muslims put together, right? So this is an important aspect of Islamic creed, that these people who are ignorant about the religion of Islam, they don't actually understand this. All right, so they think they can go around insulting this. But it wouldn't be fair if a Muslim said, the Jews didn't die during the Holocaust, or the Jews deserved it, or September the 11th, good riddance. Imagine somebody says something like that. These people would be arrested and put behind bars for terrorism and hate speech and all sorts of stuff. But this woman manages to go on there, use the B word, okay,
under the guise of freedom of speech,
under the the excuse of freedom of speech and expression.
I'm not too savvy with Twitter, so I want to ask you: have people reported her? Can people report her?
I think the tweet is still there. I have seen it in the last 3 days. I don't know if it's been removed. So what's happened is the tweet is still there. You can report it. If you have the Twitter app, you can use the menu button wherever it is, whether it's on iOS or on Android. Use the menu button when you open the tweet up, the actual offensive tweet, and say report, and it would ask you, is this harassment or abuse? And it will give you kind of like multiple questions. You can definitely report this kind of tweet or any similar kind of tweet by other persons if you are offended or you are facing any kind of Twitter abuse.
I mean, let's not talk too much about her, but this person, I was going to call her lady again. This person, someone really needs to do something about this person, because it's not the first time I've heard her using these kind of languages.
Yeah. Why is the police not doing anything about this?
Yeah.
Why is Mr. Cameron not coming out and saying this is outrageous? But if a Muslim girl was tweeting something out of Syria saying, you Muslims, take the battlefield to you if you can't come to the battlefield. There's been something about a Pakistani girl, I think, in Syria who's moved there. This was a news story
Scotland.
today. Yeah, from Scotland, sorry. Her name is Aqsa Mahmoud, I believe. And she's tweeting something like that, okay? If you're finding that offensive and you're going to make a hoo-ha and a big story about this, and, and the security apparatus is very much aware of her and investigating this, how come this lady manages to get away with saying the kind of things she just said, deeply offensive stuff, and provoking kind of the sentiments of the Muslims right now with the media, what they're doing?
Because she speaks for British values.
Okay.
Because she's speaking against the common enemy at this time, as they say. My friend's enemy is my enemy.
That's right. That's exactly what is happening.
The commies of today.
And I found it strange because she used that B word to describe all Muslims. Okay, and that B word is a swear word when used to swear at people, but it does have a actual technical meaning, which isn't a swear word. That same word has a technical meaning, which means illegitimate child, i.e. you, sir, were born outside of marriage or out of wedlock. You're an illegitimate child. And the irony of it is,
she's most likely born out of illegitimacy.
I'm not speaking about her, brothers, Brother Khabbab, right? But they live in a society, okay? This so-called British value is not marriage. Marriage is not a British value anymore.
It's promiscuity.
British values suggest that you don't have to be married, and there are a lot of people who are non-Muslims who are having children outside of marriage, on a regular basis. Now, a few generations have been doing that. And this is something that marriage is not a promoted value in the culture. However, if you look into Islam and the Muslim habits and Muslim kind of traditions, you find that marriage is a very crucial thing. Muslims are told that they cannot actually see members of the opposite gender before marriage in the way that non-Muslims do, right? And so when they have children, they normally have children inside wedlock after marriage. I know maybe perhaps there are some young people out there who don't practice their religion, who haven't, who are not very religious, to say, but when they've, say for example, they realize that they're about to have a child or something like that, they get very serious about getting married. You see? And we know, of course, this is not allowed in Islam to have children outside of marriage. So we cannot condone that in any sense or way. But it's just ironic that this woman who's promoting these types of values where marriage is not important and having children outside of wedlock is not a problem. And there are probably generations of young people who are born illegitimate children, right? She is using that slur against Muslims, the ones who are promoting marriage and having children after marriage.
I think we've had a lot of things to discuss today.
There was a couple of points that we actually couldn't discuss, but we've done a very interesting show this week. We are coming to our end now. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with? Anything?
Yeah, I do. I still want to talk about this whole issue. And basically, there's a very interesting article by Joseph Harker in The Guardian.
I think we should kind of...
Hold on. Just listen to the title. Just listen to the title. It says here, it's time to face up to the problem of sexual abuse in the white community. All right? And then he cites Stuart Hall.
Hang on.
Yeah.
What was that?
It says, it's time to face up to the problem of sexual abuse in the white community.
I think you got that wrong. I'm pretty sure it says Muslim community there.
No, it says white community.
You got it wrong.
All right. The reason why he's actually trying to say that, look, the serious, or statistically, the pedophiles who are abusing young children happen to be white more often than not. Okay, so how come there are Muslims who are being constantly targeted, and Rotherham has become such an Asian issue all of a sudden? And so there's this whole. And there's a whole question about Christianity and the church and what they've been doing to young children. There's a lot of statistics that this gentleman brings forward, and he talks about. And he wrote a second article called "This is How Racism Takes Root."
Okay,
right?
I think we don't want to be going too many.
1 minute.
I think he's trying to finish off his 18 articles.
Yeah, I've just got one more article to refer.
No, that's not happening. That is not happening.
I think we're going to have to really, kind of wrap it up here.
That's right. Let's do that.
And I just thought I'll reshare one of the house Muslim proverbs just before we finish, which is an apology a day keeps the Islamophobe away. Something which we've learned very much from all the headlines of today.
Thank you for all the listeners and people who text in and WhatsApped in.
So I'd like to apologize first of all, and lastly that we couldn't cover the iCloud issue. I know a lot of you guys are fans of Apple and iPhone.
I guess the techno show.
I was actually going to say we need to do a separate show for this because
for the tech stuff.
We definitely need to have a show on this.
Get all the fanboys, come and flaming me on this show.
Yeah.
Look, your brother Zain, we all know you're one of those iPhone fanatic, those slaves, those sheep. Sorry.
I think we just need to go
and have a... We know you're an Android fanatic.
No, I'm not. Why would I be an Android fanatic? I'm not a fanatic.
He is an Android fanatic.
I just love technology.
Let's just put it out this way.
Okay, let's just
make it clear. You are an Android fanatic. I am not an Apple fanatic.
You are an Apple fanatic. Year in, year out, you only buy an Apple.
I think we need some mediation here.
Just for reference. No, hang on. Hang on, just for reference. Brother Ahmed is the one who recommended an Apple phone for me when I asked him.
I think you're getting a bit too personal here now.
I did recommend.
Let's do the personal squabbles.
There are some people who just wouldn't accept.
We need to go back to
Mr. Producer turning my microphone down.
I think you should just switch it off.
I will do now. But what I was going to say is that you don't need to be an Apple fan to be an slave or sheep.
Not at all. It's the way you think.
It's the mentality.
It's the mentality.
And if Brother Ahmed did give a recommendation, I'm sure he gave the right recommendation for the right person according to
just
his
like a doctor gives the correct prescription to the medication that required by the patient.
Hang on. The producer. Can you just stop talking now, please?
Like
you were doing most of the
very giant smartphone.
Most of the show.
Just that right recommendation. This reminds me of a very short kind of incident from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where there was another famous story when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he came and he gave all of his wealth fi sabilillah, and Prophet ﷺ accepted all of that. There was another Sahabi who came. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why have you left behind? And he said, same thing. I give all of my wealth. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, you take back a certain portion of it, because again it depends on each individual situation and circumstances. He knew Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu could give all of that fi sabilillah and then continue live that hardship where others couldn't. So again, I just want
to hikmah of Brother Ahmed. Subhanallah.
I was thinking exactly of that hadith when I gave you the advice to buy the iPhone. No, just joking about that one.
On that note,
yes.
On that note.
We need a tech show. We need a tech show.
We'll end it here.
We need a tech show. We need to end it here.
We end the show here. Jazakumullah khair, everybody, for listening. I do apologize for dragging it on. There were so many things to discuss. Brother Zain kept a tab on things. Barakallahu feek. We hope you enjoyed the show. And we want to give a special thanks to Brother Kaleem from Cage. And those of you who texted us, be sure to tune in next week, same time, 10 p.m. Tell all your friends, tell all your colleagues about the Security Council.
Yeah, please pass on the information for the show.
You're listening to the Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program. Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.